All right, what is going on, guys? This video is on why you don't need better ads. So let's go ahead and hop into it and I will explain what I'm talking about here. So I want to preface this by saying I don't know your specific business, but this is just based on general knowledge that I have from seeing mistakes that people often make. So you don't need better ads, in my opinion, if your product sucks, people don't buy again, you haven't made any real improvements to your product in years. And this can happen especially if you have a product where, say, it's something somebody only really needs to buy once, like this iPhone, for example. Imagine if iPhone only had one version, they never made improvements. Do you think iPhone would be as big of a company as they are now if they never improved their product? Probably not. But what do? They got, the original iPhone, the iPhone after that, the iPhone after that, and eventually they get to where they have like the iPhone 14, and they go through all these iterations and these improvements on their product because it is so important for being able to grow a business, especially if you have a product where people don't really have a need to buy more than once. So, and then lastly, if your ads were performing well, and there's some nuance here, if your ads were performing well and your costs just keep creeping up, nothing seems to work with your ads. Everything was working, and then now all of a sudden, things are not working. You're seeing these comments about quality issues, whatever it may be, and you can't figure out what is going on. So let's say, for example, you get better ads, because that's what everybody wants to do. When they're stuck in business, they're struggling to get new customers in. They want to go out, they find some marketing agency or some freelancer or whatever it may be, and they want to hire them to fix their business by running ads. And the problem with that is this is only one part inside your business. Running ads will not fix a bad business in the long term. So let's use this example. So you go out and you hire this person, right? So let's say you're hiring this freelancer, agency, whatever it may be. So you may be investing thousands of dollars just from that alone, or from the creatives, or from just the time and effort that goes into making those ads. Because chances are, especially if you are already doing a decent amount of sales, it may not be a super easy task to improve those results. Now, sure, if you understand how the algorithm works, with social media ads, you can use it to your advantage. Sure, absolutely. If you understand marketing, and know what goes into good ads, can you use that to your advantage? Absolutely, right? But let's just say, for the sake of this example, you're able to improve your performance by 5 or 10%. You reduce your cost per purchase by 5 or 10%, or whatever it may be, right? So maybe you're a smaller business and you're doing $30,000 a month, somewhere in there, right? And you're just stuck and you're kind of spinning your wheels in the mud, but then you get this little bit of an improvement. That 5 to 10% improvement is probably not even going to cover that investment that you made with all the testing that you had to do, or the hiring the agency, all the costs and stuff that went into that. And what's going to happen if you have a bad business, or you have a business where people aren't buying again, and you were not addressing that problem and looking at other ways to fix that problem first? What's going to happen? After time, enough time goes by, your cost will probably continue to creep back up to where you started, if not even higher at some point. Because what happens whenever you're running ads is it's very easy, or I say relatively easy, for you to get purchases at first, a lot of times. So if you're running a campaign on a low budget, right, and you already have a business that's bringing in some sales, and you just set up some retargeting campaign on a low budget, you may be able to get purchases from that campaign relatively easily, right? If you're at a very low budget. So say you're at $10 a day running a retargeting campaign. That campaign may get a 4x, 5x return, or whatever it may be. Great. That's great. But the problem is you're only spending $10 a day. So what happens as you start to spend more money is, Facebook or whatever ad platform typically will start to show those ads to people who are less likely to buy as you start to spend more money. And the other thing is, if you start to spend more money and you have a bad business, or you have a business where you're having quality issues, you'll have this thing happen that's called negative word of mouth. So imagine you see an ad for a product, right? And you go to buy that product, and then your buddy tells you, as you're talking to him about it, you're like, hey, I just saw an ad for so-and-so's brand. They say, I would not buy that. I bought one of those and it had issues with the lid, or it had issues with this for the quality, or I bought one of those phones and it's crap, or you read the comments and you see people leaving comments that are negative comments on those ads. And then you decide, what, I'm not going to buy. Or you go to the reviews and you see people leaving a bunch of bad reviews on the ad, or you search them up on social media and you see these bad reviews. Okay? So what will happen is, if you don't fix that issue and you delay fixing this issue, or you just drag your feet, you wait months and months to fix something that is a critical issue that is costing you money and causing customers to not be unhappy or to not be happy, your ad costs will creep up. You'll become less profitable over time, most likely, in my opinion. And it can cost you lots and lots of money, and could even cost you to go out of business if you don't fix those quality issues. If you're not innovating your product, you don't fix quality issues, and you keep just trying to look for temporary solutions, that may be what happens. But with that being said, if you have a business that has critical issues with the product, does it make sense to focus on ads, to go out and hire some ads guy to try to fix your business? Or does it make sense to just fix the business to begin with so that you can actually make money? And if you do the math on it, let's say you sell your product to 1,000 people every month. Let's say you're getting 1,000 customers a month, and none of them come back to buy again. Now, on the other hand, let's say you have a business where they sell 1,000 people the product, and every customer is worth twice as much money. And then on top of that, they tell more people about their brand. Which one is going to win? The one that's able to do a really good job running ads in the short term, and get all these customers in, but then they don't come back to buy again, and then they tell everybody about how terrible the product is or this issue that they had. Are they going to win? Or is it going to be the brand who maybe they don't spend as much time focusing on the ads? Their cost per purchase is just a little bit higher. They're not spending as much time focusing just on the ads, but they're focusing on the business. They're focusing on the product. They're focusing on the service, and they're actually investing into fixing issues inside their business. That's where you can really make the money. And then once you nail that, this can really, really accelerate the growth of a business. So if you have a good business already that has a product that's dialed in, that's really good, that doesn't have quality issues, you have good packaging, you have a good delivery, you have a good service, or whatever it is, if it doesn't have issues with that, then that's when you can really pour the gasoline on the fire and accelerate the growth of the business by running ads. But you have to fix that first. So what's the real solution? You fix the business and you stop focusing on just ads if there are real issues inside the business. So running ads to a bad business, it's like taking gasoline and just pouring it on a fire that's burning your house down. So if I, for example, have a business and it is having quality issues with the product, and I just keep ramping up the budget on ads, ramping up the budget and just spending more and more and more time focusing on the marketing and investing all these thousands and thousands of dollars into marketing, and not on fixing the reason that people aren't coming back to buy again, or the reason that people are having issues with their product. This is like taking the gasoline. If your house is caught on fire, and instead of figuring out how to put out the fire, you take gasoline and you throw gasoline on the fire. That's what this is like doing. People think that running ads is going to be the solution to their problems when they have a bad business and people are coming to buy and they're just not buying again. The real solution is fixing the business. And another thing to keep in mind is you can't just look at reviews. Yes, reviews can give you some idea of issues that you have, but you can't just look at reviews. Imagine this. How many times have you been to a restaurant, where you had an experience with a service where it was really bad, but you did not spend enough time to actually leave a bad review? think about that for a second. There have been many times in my life where I had a very bad experience, had a meal that was just terrible, or somebody was rude, or whatever it may be. And I did not take the time to go leave them a negative review. So you can't rely just on reviews or just on even comments. Though if you are getting a bunch of comments saying the same thing about some kind of negative issue, you should definitely take that into consideration, because not everybody who has a bad experience is going to leave a negative comment or a bad review. So here's an example of what a bad business would look like, or a business that has a critical issue that they need to fix, in my opinion. So let's say, for example, you sell a protein powder, and typically in this market, the prices are going to vary, but for 30 servings in this business, you have 30 servings there. It's going to run you 40, maybe $50, somewhere in that ballpark. And for your product, you're charging about 60 for an unflavored protein powder. So all the other brands, they all have flavors, right? They got the vanilla protein, the chocolate protein. They've got all these different flavors, right? And they're a lot cheaper than yours. And to be honest, when you're in a competitive industry, price does matter somewhat. You don't have to be the cheapest. So I will repeat that. You do not have to be the cheapest, but price does matter to some extent when you are in a competitive industry, right? You can't come in and be 3 times the price of everybody else and have less options, and maybe the quality is just kind of about the same, and then expect to be able to beat them. It's just not how it works. So if your product has 14 servings in this case, and you're charging, it costs them $60 to get an unflavored protein powder, which nobody likes to begin with, for example, there's this very, very small portion of the market who would buy this product, right? When in reality, if you're stuck growing the business and you haven't been able to grow when you have a product that people would buy again, the problem is not that you need to go out and hire a marketing guy. The problem is that people aren't buying again, and that you don't have any options. You don't even have options. It's all one flavored product. And you can sit here and say, oh, well, it's the best quality. Ours is the best quality on the market. Why don't ads work for me? Or why am I stuck at the same revenue that I was roughly, give or take, 3 years ago? You could be asking yourself all these things, or you could just fix the real issue with the product, because if people are buying the product already, obviously there's something there, right? But the problem is that you're not improving the product. You don't have a product that is competitive with others in the space, and you aren't making the effort on the back end to improve the business, right? If you improve the business, then the business will grow, because then people will tell other people about the product and they may buy. And it's the snowball effect, but it can also do the other or go the other way when you have a bad product or you have a product with issues. And to add to this, when you run the ads and then all the comments are saying this is ridiculously priced, or I don't like this ingredient, or whatever it may be, the price is way too high for the number of servings, you can either sit here and you can complain and you can say, oh, well, they don't know what they're talking about. Our quality is great. Or you can look at that and you can say, they're giving me feedback on what I need to improve in my business, and work to fix that issue, instead of going out and hiring some marketing guy, wasting your money, having them run ads and waste money on ads just to maybe get somebody to buy, one time, for example, and probably not even be profitable at first, and then them not buy again. And now you just spend all the money on ads. You spend all the money to hire whatever marketing guy that is, and you still didn't fix the issue. So understand, with this being said, understand your marketing guy's role. If you hire a marketing guy, it is not their job to fix your business, right? It's not their job to manage your finances. It's not their job to fix your business, even though I will say, if you have a good one, they may give you some suggestions and guidance on things that you can do. Okay, so they may tell you, hey, it looks like your product's having this issue. This is what I would do to fix this, or whatever it may be, if they're good and they know what they're doing. So it's also not their job to manage your inventory. If that is part of their role, that's a little bit different. But if you're hiring some ads guy who just is going to manage your ads, then they're not going to be responsible for all of these other things. Now, if you're a small company and maybe you've assigned somebody the task of learning how to run ads or whatever it may be, sure, maybe they have other responsibilities too. But if you're going out and you're hiring an ad agency, it's not their responsibility to fix your business. It's not their responsibility to even run your business unless it is made clear that that is their responsibility. So keep that in mind. And don't expect your ads guy to be the one who fixes your business when people aren't coming back to buy again, right? So your ads guy, think about this as a person who can get people in the door, right? Your marketing guy, your ads guy, whatever you want to call him, is helping you to get more people in the door who may buy. That doesn't mean every person's going to buy. That doesn't mean they're going to come back and buy again necessarily. Now, sure, they should have a basic understanding of business, practices, business knowledge. They need to understand your costs and all of this other stuff that goes in there if they're going to be good at their job, right? Or if they're doing anything at scale. So they need to understand your business to be able to help you operate your business or operate the ads inside your business, but it isn't their job to run the whole business for you. It's their job to help you market the business. There's a big difference there. So a lot of people hire the ads guy because they want them to fix the business, when in reality, they don't need to do that. And they're just wasting their money if they aren't going to focus on doing the other stuff too. So, at scale, what's going to happen when you run ads? If you're spending $10 a day, maybe you get, a really profitable return on those ad dollars, right? So, you're seeing a really good return, really low cost per purchase at $10 a day, especially if you're running retargeting, for example. Now, what's going to happen at $100 a day if you're running ads? Typically, if you were to scale that campaign up, we'll just assume it's broad targeting, no retargeting or anything, which with broad targeting, your campaign is technically retargeting people, but that's a whole nother story. So we're going to assume you're running broad targeting, right? Now, when you scale that campaign up from $10 to $100 a day, what may happen is that cost per purchase that you're paying to get that purchase or the result that you were optimizing for will increase likely at some point. It may not increase at 100. It might increase a little bit, but it's really going to depend. So at $10 a day, you're getting a certain result. At $100 a day, the cost to get a customer increases. And then at $1,000 a day, for example, that cost would increase even more. So the more money you spend and the longer you spend money, typically it's going to get more expensive to reach customers, right? And so that's why it is so important that if you have a business and you want to succeed long term, you have to be reinvesting into things that help you to have those customers come back and buy again, right? So that could be innovating the product. You come out with a new version or even just new colors of a product. If you have a new product and you launch this new special edition color, you see like shaker cup brands doing stuff like this, for example, where they come out with these limited edition color drops that they promote to try to give people a reason to want the next color. iPhone even does this with different color options where they're coming out with all these new color options, right? Or you just innovate the product, right? So in some cases, it may make sense to just improve the product design along with those new color options or new designs or whatever it may be, new sizes. There's all kinds of stuff you can do, right? And then on top of that, there's also the back-end marketing efforts. What are you doing on social media? For example, what are you doing with your email flows, for example? Do you have email flows set up to remarket to people who bought, or help convert more customers? Do you have CRO that you are working on with your website? Now, depending on where you're at in the business, some of these things may not make sense to really invest in. Like if you're just starting out and you're only doing a few $1,000s a month, probably don't need to go hire a CRO agency, But anyways, my point is, in conclusion, ads are important. They're an important part of your business. Marketing is an important part of your business, absolutely. But so are your product, obviously, and the delivery of your product or service, whatever it is that you're selling. Very, very, very important. In fact, I would say probably even more important than your marketing, right? You can have a really good marketing guy and have a crappy product, but what's going to happen? You might see some success. You might see some success with a good marketing guy, but over time, what's going to happen? It will get harder and harder. If your product sucks, it will get harder and harder for them to actually see success marketing your product if the product is not good or there's an issue with the service that is going unfixed. So what else is important? Your social media presence, your brand image, your brand values, all this stuff plays a factor. Your operations and inventory management. So if you're not managing your inventory, let's say you've got a really good marketing guy. Let's say you hire somebody who's really, really good at what they do, but you sell out every other week and you don't fix that issue. Imagine if Chick-fil-A or one of these big fast food restaurants was out of their key product half of the year, one of their key products. Imagine they were out, one of these fast food restaurants or whoever is out of one of their key selling products half of the year. Do you think that they could be successful at scale? Probably not. Probably not. So if you don't manage your inventory, is that really their problem? Is that your marketing guy's fault that you have issues with your inventory management? What about your finances? If you don't understand finances, let's say they're making you a bunch of money. You're making a couple $100,000 a month, even call it. Let's say you're doing pretty well, right? Making a few $100,000. Maybe you're making $250,000 a month, we'll call it. And a lot of that is profit. So let's say you're making at least $50,000 a month in profit, which is pretty decent money, right? If you go out and you blow that money on stuff and you start blowing a bunch of money, buying a bunch of things that don't have any ROI, is that your marketing guy's fault or is that your fault for making poor financial choices? A lot of people, they want to blame their marketing guy or they want to blame whoever it is for their own choices. And the reason they aren't able to get to where they want to go is because they point the finger at other people or they make their problems that they have due to their own choices other people's problems and expect them to cater to them. If you want to be able to grow, you have to look at your own problems and just take accountability for them and say, hey, you know what? We made this decision. It didn't work out. This is our fault. This is nobody else's. I'm not going to blame anybody else. I'm not going to expect anybody to do me a favor because of a choice that I made. I'm just going to live with this decision that I made. And that's the reality. That's how you start to become successful, is you have to take accountability for those choices, right? And we all make mistakes. We all screw up. There's nothing wrong with making mistakes. It's when you refuse to take any accountability for anything that you do when it becomes a problem, especially if you're talking about running a business and dealing with your finances, right? And it's also, ads are also important, but it's also important to have website CRO at some point going on. It's also important to have your email flows. It's also important to have other marketing efforts outside of just ads going on. Posting consistently on social media. It could be attending events or whatever it may be. There's all kinds of other stuff outside of just ads that affects the growth of a business. So in short, that is what I got for today. Hope you guys found it helpful. But yeah, anyways, this is a video on basically why it's not always the answer to just lower your ad costs. Sometimes it can be, and sometimes it can be very helpful to do that. But do not expect lowering your ad cost alone to be the reason that you succeed long-term in business. It can get you short-term wins, and it can absolutely help to grow your business if you're really good at marketing and you understand how to advertise. Absolutely, that can help, but that's not the only thing. You have to have a good product too. So anyways, if you found this helpful, feel free to leave a comment below, hit the subscribe button, let me know what you want to see next. And if you comment your brand name, then I will take a look at some of your Facebook ads, maybe, and I might even do a review on your Facebook ads. So let me know what you want to see next, but that is it for today's video.